Let's give all praises to the Most High, whose true name in the ancient Hebrew is Yahweh, in the name of his only begotten Son, whose true name in the ancient Hebrew is Yahweh Shai, and the Holy Spirit, which in the ancient Hebrew is the Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the elders of GMS, who taught us his truth by the Holy Spirit. Honors to the brothers risking their life and freedom to push the gospel. Peace and blessings to the elect, who will be the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who make up the lost 12 tribes of Israel. According to scripture and prophecy, the elect will be 1/3 of the Israelites who in the last days will return back to Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai to receive salvation, while the 2/3 of Israel who don't turn back to the Most High be destroyed with America. We back with another lesson through the mercy of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. This lesson is going to be titled The Collapse of Law and Order in America. Again, the collapse of law and order in America. Now, I got a video we're going to look into with things concerning ICE, what they've been doing, things that's been happening to show that law and order is beginning to collapse in America. Now, when you think about law and order, the justice system, there's always going to be a villain and there's going to be the victim. You know, the villain, the criminal, somebody's going to be a victim. Then there's a judge, a police officer, a hero, whatever words you want to use. Everybody has their role. You know, it's always clear who the victim is. It's always clear who the hero is. Always clear who the criminal, who the villain is. Well, the roles are beginning to be mashed up here at the end. So when you look at what's taking place in America, you can't tell who's a victim and who's a criminal. You got the criminals, they pretending to be the victims, and you got America making the victims look like they criminals. And who would the victims be? The Northern Kingdom, so-called Latin American people, you know, and also the Native American people, and also so-called Negro people. We would be the victims to what ICE in America is doing. But they making it seem like we the criminal, we the villain, and they the hero. And if anything, they trying to play the victim. We taking their jobs. We making America not a safe place. But again, you see these roles of being a villain, a hero, a criminal. They're all being mashed up. You don't know who's who. So we're gonna sort of make sense of that. And I guess we're gonna start with a couple of these words because the lesson is titled The Collapse of Law and Order in America. Now let's get this definition for law. Often the law, the system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members, and the members would be the hero, the criminal, the villain, the judge, the officer, whatever you call them. Regulating the actions of its members, which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. So the law is a system. There's a bunch of parts that work together, you know, to bring order. And when a system no longer works because you can't tell who's who, well, you don't have order, now you have disorder. You got unfair penalties being put on people who are not guilty of any crimes. And you got villains and criminals, which would be those ICE agents, which a lot of them are KKK members. You got them trying to play the hero. So law, which is a system, a bunch of moving parts and rules and regulations that's supposed to work to bring order, well, it's not working anymore. Now what we have in America is disorder, and you don't have you don't have justice. You have injustice, which America has never been about justice anyway. But show the definition of law. Let's get this precept real quick. This is the book of Job, chapter 10 and 22. We're going to get it in both versions, KJV and NLT. A land of darkness as darkness itself. And this would be talking about America, but really the whole world. But America would be the epicenter of this darkness. And of the shadow of death without any order. That's America, without any order. A man can be a woman can be a man. You could be both. You could be transitioning, stuck in between the two. There's no order here. It says where the light is as darkness, the darkness represents confusion, misinformation, disinformation, lies. But again, this would be a land of darkness without any order, which when you read it in the NLT, it is a land as dark as midnight, a land of gloom and confusion. So that's what's at an all-time high here in America is confusion, especially when you look at what's going on with ICE. The people they've been targeting, what you hear in the news, is all wartime propaganda. But again, it's a lot of confusion because you see one thing on the news, they say one thing on the news, but when you out in the real world and see what's happening, it's the complete opposite going on. And that's done on purpose to keep the people in confusion. But again, this is a place without any order. So when you think about the members of law and order in the justice system, now you got the criminals and the villains claiming that they're the hero. While they try to say the people who really are the victims, they trying to make them out to be the bad guy. So that's another reason this place is without any order. And we're going to get more into it. But we're going to look up this word order in the NLT real quick. H5468. It says arrange, order. Arrangement, order. We're going to look up this word order. The arrangement of people or things in relation to each other. A state in which the laws and rules regulating the public behavior of members of a community are observed and authority is obeyed. I didn't mean to do that. Well, this word arrangement is here for order, so maybe I look up that word arrangement. Anyways, we'll go back to this word order. Order pretty much represent everything being in this place, everybody playing a role, pretty much. But now let's get this word disorder, because that's what we now have in America, which has always been disorder. It says a state of confusion, the disruption of peaceful and law-abiding behavior. Don't we see that? Confusion. You don't know who's an ICE agent and who's not. Are they really federal agents or are they fake-ass ICE agents? Disruption of peaceful, law-abiding behavior. You see that? Northern Kingdom getting snatched up from work. Now you got work that's not being done here in America. Disrupt the systematic functioning or neat arrangement. And we know the systematic function that's in discussion is the law and justice system in America is being disrupted. And that's the confusion. So we're going to also get this in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 30, verse 7, because, you know, the collapse of law and order in America, this state of great confusion, this is all to build up to Jacob's trouble. And it says, in all history, there has never been such a time of terror. It will be a time of trouble for my people Israel, and that would be the 12 tribes, which in the KJV is referred to as Jacob's trouble. Yep. For that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even a time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So yeah, again, NLT, in our history, there has never been such a time of terror. It will be a time of trouble for my people Israel, yet in the end they will be saved. So our people about to go through a time of trouble that they've never seen before. Not hardcore slavery, not the genocide of the Native Americans, not the conquistadors colonizing North, South, Central America. None of it's going to compare to what we're about to go through here in the time of Jacob's trouble. And we see that beginning to happen. And the setting of Jacob's trouble is what we see taking place. The collapse of law and order in America. You got criminals and villains trying to be the hero. The true victims. The world saying that they the bad guy, they the villains, they the criminals. But I got a video we're going to get into. And then we're going to get some scriptures. This is from the brother GMS Kingdom Minded. But we're going to make this bigger so we can read it as well. So check this out.
Is coming up, you know. Agents still identify themselves while masked.
And what they talking about right now is ICE agents not identifying themselves. Bro. Because that's contributing to the confusion as well. You don't know if it's an actual federal agent or a fake. You can't get a badge number. You can't get a name. They ask you to identify yourself, but they don't identify themselves. But here we go. Hold on.
DHS has argued that agents still identify themselves while masked. When our heroic law enforcement officers conduct operations, they clearly identify themselves as law enforcement while wearing masks to protect themselves from being targeted by highly sophisticated gangs like Tren de Agua and MS-13 criminal rings. Okay, they've all...
So that's a confusion right there. They said ICE is wearing masks so they're not targeted by Tren de Aragua, MS-13, criminal rings, murderers, rapists. And when they say these words, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, of course that's the Northern Kingdom, with criminal rings and murders, they talking about the 12 tribes. They claim that's why ICE is wearing masks. But ain't nobody did nothing to ICE yet. So this is where the confusion happens right here. Because have you ever seen MS-13 gang activity in America? Have you ever seen Tren de Aragua in America causing trouble? No. But what you do see is American citizens collectively causing trouble, with most of the crime being committed by so-called white people who are the Edomites. So the murderers and the rapists, the criminal rings, is really dealing with these Edomites. They commit most of the crime. But let's continue.
Had criminal rings. They've always had the mafia. They've always had gangs in the United States. They've always had the Crips and the Bloods. They've always had criminal gangs. They've never worn masks.
See? So why they wearing masks now? Like you said, there's always been, you know, criminal gangs, etc. in America, but why they wearing masks now? We're gonna get into it.
Here with Nick Cruz from the Revolutionary Blackout Network, and I've talked about this in the past, where you see ICE agents dressed like this with masks on, and off.
See, they go to confusion. He's dressed like a gang member. a green bandana. Ain't that what the Crips and Bloods do? Different gangs, they wear, different color bandanas. That's where the confusion begins right here. But let's continue.
don't have their name. That's unusual for them to have their name. They don't. So they'll show up with a face mask on, no badge, no nothing. And I always said, well, this would be perfect if you're a criminal. You could just put a mask on, say you're ICE, and then start kidnapping people.
Exactly. So when ICE show up, which they don't show up identifying themselves, there's usually no badge, no uniform, no way to recognize them. And he said, being like this would be cool if you were a criminal. They supposed to be law enforcement officers, but they moving like criminals. He said this is how you want to dress if you want to kidnap somebody, if you want to do some dirt. And that's exactly what they doing, which that's why they wear clothes, with no badge, no uniform, because they doing dirt, and he gonna get into it in a little bit. But yeah, you got people, and they the villains, but they claiming to be the hero, claiming they cleaning up illegal immigrants, they cleaning up so-called gang activity that don't exist. They getting criminals off the street. They the real villain, they the real criminals, but they claiming to be the heroes. And that's according to U.S. media. But when you out there in the real world see what's going on, they moving like the mob, like a mafia. ICE is the biggest gang in America right now. But let's continue. And that's why Job said, a land of darkness as darkness itself, the shadow of death without any order. See, with order, you can distinguish who's who. You can clearly tell a victim from a villain. You can clearly tell the hero from the bad guy. But not in these days.
You could commit all kinds of crimes. Well, it turns out that's actually happening. I said this. You can't have cops, and they're saying, well, they're going to dox those cops. Hey, there's been cops in the United States for 400 years. They've always had to wear their name tag. They always had to have a badge number, and they also always had to show their face. Somehow they made it. But all of a sudden, in 2025, cops have to start covering their face because they're afraid of being doxxed. Well, then quit.
Yeah.
Because you don't get to police the United States in a mask undercover, and we don't know who you are. And why? Because the FBI warns of criminals posing as ICE. That's what they're doing.
See that? Criminals posing as ICE agents. And then we say, in a land with order concerning law and justice, you can tell who the criminal is versus the victim. You can tell who the bad guy is versus the hero. But now them lines have been blurred. And you got criminals posing as ICE agents. You got real criminals, murderers, rapists, domestic terrorists trying to play the hero. And that's what we see with ICE, especially when they get into what they're doing. They abducting people, they raping people, they extorting people, snatching people up for ransom, like the mafia. But let's continue.
Urges agents to ID themselves. Really, the FBI is telling the ICE to ID. Criminals posing as U.S. immigration officers have carried out robberies, kidnappings, sexual assaults in several states.
See that? Criminals posing as U.S. immigration ICE agents have carried out robberies, abductions, kidnappings, sexual assaults in several states. And I bet this is underreported. It's probably happening in every state. But again, you got this happening by ICE agents. And that's why I titled the lesson something like the collapse of law and order in America. Now you have disorder. You don't know who the criminal is. You don't know who the villain really is, because they claiming to be the hero but moving like the villain. But the U.S. media tell you that they're making America safe again, when they the only real danger in America, disrupting normal life. Construction has stopped. Farming and agriculture has stopped. Entire buildings and restaurants and stores don't got people to work it. So the real danger is ICE, not the people who they claim to be the danger, the Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom. But let's get back here.
The enforcement bulletin issued last month by the FBI.
And this is the FBI reporting this. You know, this ain't us. The FBI is telling you that there's criminals posing as ICE agents. And okay, the problem is ICE agents, the real ones, they don't identify themselves either. So you can't tell the real from the fake. So when you're approached by one, do you obey or do you fight back? You fight back and it's a real ICE agent, they gonna make you the bad guy. But you fight back because you thought it was fake ICE agents trying to protect yourself. So this is that land of confusion, land without order. This is the collapse of law and order in America.
The Bureau urges agencies to ensure officers clearly identify themselves and to cooperate when civilians ask to verify an officer's identity,
And we know they're not gonna identify themselves.
including by allowing calls to local police precincts. Ensure law enforcement personnel adequately identify themselves during operations and cooperate with individuals who request further verification. That's what the FBI is saying.
But they're not gonna do it.
The bulletin cites 5 2025 incidents involving fake immigration officers and says criminals are using immigration and customs enforcement's heightened profile to target vulnerable communities, make it harder for Americans to distinguish between lawful officers and imposters while eroding trust in law enforcement. I said
So that's the thing with the collapse of law and order in America. You can't distinguish, you know, the heroes from the bad guys. Because you got bad guys posing as officers. And then you got the bad guys and officers both doing dirt. And when they say they're targeting vulnerable communities, that would be the poor, which that would be the 12 tribes, Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. Poor don't mean you don't got money. Poor mean you lack the power to save yourself or to change your situation. That's the law system working against you. You know, the law enforcement, you know, the police officers, they against you. You don't really have a voice to speak out. That's what it means to be poor, meaning you lack power. It says making it harder for Americans to distinguish between law officers and imposters. So yeah. And let's continue.
this is what we've been saying since day one. A review of public reporting confirms 4 or 5 cases described in the bulletin. One appears to have gone unreported, suggesting the FBI drew in part on internal law enforcement information. On August 7th, according to the FBI, 3 men in black vests entered a New York restaurant claiming to be ICE agents. Inside, they tied workers' hands and pulled a garbage bag over the person's head.
See that? They moving like the mafia. You know, they appear to be ICE agents. They appear to be the hero that's supposed to make America safe, but they doing dirty work, putting trash bags over people's heads. And then you already know that these people were most likely Northern Kingdom, so-called Native American or Latin American people. There's probably at a taco shop or something. That's probably the restaurant they was at. So you see one thing on the news, but then you hear stuff like this. It says, let's continue.
Another, believing the burglar's story, surrendered themselves, only to be kicked to the ground and tied up as the intruders robbed their ATM.
Damn. Now we got to talk about that. So there's another story. The burglars. So there was more ICE agents that were actually There were people who were claiming to be ICE agents, but they were burglars. So people they fell for the story like, yeah, these were ICE agents. Then they got kicked to the ground and tied up and stole the money out the ATM. So they doing bake runs, smash and grabs, robbing ATMs, tying trash bags over people's heads. This is the collapse of law and order in America. And then people going to get fed up, and they're going to take matters into their own hands. That's why when we get this in the book of 2nd Ezra 15, we're going to start at 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and the destruction draweth nigh. The sword being the race wars, civil wars. Here in America, the destruction being World War III. It's going to happen in that order. And one people shall stand up and fight against another. This is your race wars, class wars, civil wars, political wars, and swords in their hands. So what's the modern day sword? The 9mm, the AR assault rifle, the AK-47. For this shall be sedition among men and invading one another. ICE is already invading people. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. That's the thing. People going to rise up. A sedition, that's a rising up against the government. Because with the government, with a king, they're going to have officers in place. So when it says they shall not regard their kings nor princes, they're going to have no regard for the government or for the officers. Government officials, politicians, they're going to be targeted. Law enforcement officers, ICE agents, eventually they're going to be targeted. In the course of their actions shall stand in their power, so they're going to take matters into their own hands. Once people realize what's going on and they get fed up. And that's why you don't hear these stories on the news. They want you to think that ICE and the National Guard, that they're the heroes. And that the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, the 12 tribes, the Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, so-called, they want you to think that we the bad guy, that we the villain, we the criminals. And the ICE agents in America, they the victims, but it's not the case.
Story surrendered themselves, only to be kicked to the ground and tied up as the intruders robbed their ATM. The Bureau's advisory urges agencies at every level of government to coordinate to verify legitimate versus non-legitimate operations attributed to ICE, a call that frames the wave of impersonations as a national law enforcement concern. The FBI has declined comment. Its National Press Office said that it could only respond to media inquiries involving national security, violations of federal law, or essential public safety functions during the government shutdown. Cases cited by its advisory span kidnappings, street crime, sexual violence. In Florida, the advisor says a woman unzipped her jacket and revealed a shirt that said ICE and told her ex-boyfriend's wife she was there to pick her up before driving her to an apartment complex. The woman later escaped. In Brooklyn, it alleges a man told a woman he was an immigration officer and directed her to a nearby stairwell where he punched her, tried to rape her, and stole her phone before police caught him.
See that? That's what ICE agents are doing. And like he just read, damn, come on. Hold on, bear with me.
In rap, directed her to a nearby.
Yeah, so people buying, ICE gear on Amazon. Like she wore a shirt that says ICE and told her ex-boyfriend's wife that she's there to pick her up. Just because somebody got a shirt that says ICE on it don't mean they wear ICE. And then here, a so-called ICE agent attempted to grape a woman. But even when we go back, forgive me, y'all, new computer, so still kind of figuring this out. God damn it.
Stairwell, kidnapping, street crime, or essential public safety. Kidnappings, street crime,
Yeah, that's it. Street crime, kidnappings, sexual violence, all of that by people who appear to be ICE agents. And that's why when we get, and that's why Jeremiah said a time of trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble, time of trouble such as never was. And when we go to the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, verse 1. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go forth into captivity, that's some concentration camps, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. But see that? Houses are going to be rifled, women are going to be ravished. Now let's get this in the NLT. I will gather all nations to fight against Jerusalem. The city will be taken, the houses looted, and the women graped. Half the population will be taken into captivity, and the rest will be left among the ruins of the city. So yeah, this is beginning to happen, from them ICE agents. Whether they fake ICE agents or real ICE agents. But that's why people going to eventually take matters into their own hands. Now, we're not even done even with the half of what these ICE agents are doing. We got to get some more stuff.
violence. In Florida, the advisor says a woman unzipped her jacket and revealed a shirt that said ICE and told her ex-boyfriend, where he punched her, tried to rape her, and stole her phone before police caught him. In Raleigh, North Carolina, a man entered a motel room and threatened to deport a woman if she did not have sex with him, telling her he was a sworn officer. He showed her a business card with a badge. The FBI describes a few signs of impersonation: forged or mismatched credentials, outdated protective gear, and clone vehicle markings.
So yeah, they breaking into people's motel rooms. Yeah, you see that a man entered a motel room? Did he enter the room or did he break in there? You can't just enter the motel room. We know he broke in there. But that's why the scripture said houses would be rifled and the women ravished. And we not done. That's extortion right there. They snatching people up for ransom, and we should be getting to that part pretty soon.
Telling her he was a sworn officer. He showed her a business card with a badge. The FBI describes a few signs of impersonation: forged or mismatched credentials, outdated protective gear, and clone vehicle markings. It's urging agencies to launch outreach programs aimed at identifying fake ICE agents, a step the FBI argues could counteract the mistrust caused by impersonators and strengthen law enforcement's image.
Yep, it's going to cause mistrust in law enforcement. That's how people going to take matters into their own hands.
Rules require immigration officers to identify themselves and state the reason for the arrest as soon as it is practical and safe to do so.
And they doing everything but that.
The standard has not changed since it was codified in the 90s, yet advocates say it is increasingly ignored.
You're probably about to skip this. Okay, we're gonna skip this, but we're gonna jump ahead in this video. Damn, bro.
Law enforcement. When a heroic
All right, check this out.
this.
People in my neighborhood are being kidnapped by what they think are ICE agents. Maybe they are ICE agents. And hours later, they're getting phone calls demanding $20,000 or $30,000 in cash as ransom to have their loved ones released. I'm going to say it again, okay? Masked men who refuse to identify themselves, who refuse to show badges, are showing up to people's work vehicles, to their churches, to their student drop-off lines. They are wearing tactical vests. They are pointing guns at people's faces, covering their faces, breaking windows, and dragging these people out of the car. And when we call 911, you know what 911 says? They say tough shit. They say we don't give a fuck. They say we can't do anything about it. And you say, how do I know these are ICE agents? How do you know these are ICE agents? And they say, oh, we get a report at the end of the day.
And this is a collapse of law and order in America. Like when we go back to that definition of what was it? I think for law, it says the system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members and which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. So it's a set of rules to hold everybody accountable. And if the rules are broken, there's penalties. Penalties can fall on anybody, from the criminal to the officer. And the FBI did all that talk. You know, when the Edomite man was talking about ICE agents must identify themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But when you call the police station, nobody's doing nothing. Nobody's holding these ICE agents accountable. Whether they real ICE agents or fake ICE agents, they're not be held accountable. So this is the collapse of law and order in America. When the law should be enforced, it's not being enforced. But it's been wrongfully enforced on certain groups of people, the 12 tribes, Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. Again, like she say, people getting snatched up from the lines at school, snatched up from work, snatched from the grocery store, snatched from the doctor's office.
You know, sometimes they tell us what they're doing, and we just basically trust that they are ICE agents. And then I get calls from families who say that their loved ones were detained by these masked men who refuse to identify themselves with guns and tactical gear, who rip them out of their vehicles. And then they get a phone call 6 hours later saying, send us $30,000 cash, send us $20,000 cash, and we will release your loved ones.
So that's what ICE is doing. They the criminals here. Now, they abducting people and saying, you bring to us $20,000, $30,000, you can get your loved one back. You know, how many movies have we seen that in? But let's see what the scriptures say. Let's go to the book of Exodus 32 and 15. Damn, that's not right. 1 second. I'm way off. So we're going to come to the book of Exodus, chapter 21 and 16. And what it say? He that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. See that? So when they kidnap people, abduct people, that's them stealing a man or a woman. And it says, and selleth him. This already happened during the time of slavery, when they sold us as slaves, as property. But you got ICE agents doing it again, snatching up our people and saying 20, 30,000, we'll let them go. That's them stealing a man and selling them. And what it say? If he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. So the way that they're going to steal us as part of this new world order is going to be that RFID microchip. But yeah, he that stealeth a man and selleth him must be put to death. And that's what they're doing with our people. You know, like it's the 1500s, 1600s all over again. Abducting our people, saying $20,000, $30,000, we'll let them go. So according to the law, hey, they got to be put to death. And then when we get this here, we're going to come to the book of Deuteronomy. Chapter 22, verse 25. It says, but if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man force her and lie with her. We just read that. They breaking into motel rooms, trying to snatch the women. They posing as ICE agents, snatching women up, snatching their clothes off. And the man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lie with her shall die. But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in a damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is the matter. So the Lord is treating you raping a woman is being treated like murder. Verse 27, I got to get this too. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her. Which we're going to get this in the NLT as well. But if the man meets an engaged woman out in the country and he grapes her, then only the man must die. Do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no crime worthy of death. She is as innocent as a murder victim. Since the man graped her out in the country, it must be assumed that she screamed, but there was no one to rescue her. And it's going to be the case for a lot of our women and children. It's going to be a lot of graping, sexual violence, with nobody to save them. And that's going to be judgment from the Lord. But the women of the elect who come across these ICE agents thinking they're going to do some dirt and get away with it, they got another thing coming. The women that's part of the elect, that help from heaven gonna get activated. Michael gonna stand up. You know, the Lord might send a man of the Lord, you know, that way, or anything else. Possibilities gonna be endless. Now we're gonna jump here to the book of Psalms, chapter 10 and 8 in the NLT. They lurk in ambush in the villages. The villages today will be the cities. They're likening the villages. And what they do in the cities, they ambushing people. That's why they wearing bandanas, faces covered up. That's why they wearing stuff that makes them hard to identify. Undercover vehicles, rental cars, They lurk in ambush in the villages, waiting to murder the innocent people. And the innocent people would be the poor. That would be the 12 tribes. The Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, because that's the only people they've been targeting the whole time. They are always searching for helpless victims. That's the 12 tribes. Like lions, crouched in hiding, they wait to pounce on the helpless. The 12 tribes, like hunters, they capture the helpless and drag them away in nets. So that's what ICE is doing. Their helpless victims are crushed. They fall beneath the strength of the wicked. Now, wicked is Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, when you read the book of Malachi 1 and 4. And we're going to get this in the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 16:68. For behold, the burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you. What's that great multitude? ICE agents, National Guard, all kinds of law enforcement, all the different branches of the government. The other Edomites that's going to be given a badge and a firearm to come up against the 12 tribes. They shall take away certain of you. The certain of you, they only messing with a certain group of people. That's the 12 tribes, beginning with the northern kingdom. And feed you being idle with things offered unto idols. Verse 70, for this shall be in every place and in the next cities. Hey, this dirty ICE activity is happening in a number of cities and states, but we know it's underreported. It says a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. So this is a war against the 12 tribes. They should be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. So, for the most part, ICE is sparing the people. I'm sure that there's men and women, that get away unharmed. They may get snatched up, they may get harassed, but they walk away with their life. So what's happening now is the warning. Book of 2nd Ezra tell you, though the plagues come, our people not going to be mindful of the scourges. They're not going to consider this is the judgment of the Lord. Maybe I should repent and get right. So what ICE is doing, it's a warning. When the Lord is done warning the people, you're going to know, because they're going to be like madmen sparing none. Every woman that gets snatched up by ICE, she's going to be raped. Every man they come across, they're going to get one to the head, two to the neck. They're going to get kirked. But that's what's going to happen after the warning is done. It says, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord, during the 12 tribes. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. So this not going to just be happening, from what you would call, gangs or criminals or the poor or violent people. No, it's going to be law enforcement, so-called, and ICE agents that's going to be doing all of this too. In fact, I think they're going to be doing most of it. And it's already happening right now. That's why we got the stories. They kicking people to the ground, claiming to be ICE agents, robbing an ATM. They kicking down motel doors, telling the woman, if you don't give it up, I'm going to deport you. They going into restaurants, tying trash bags over people's heads, snatching up women, putting a $20,000, $30,000 price tag on their head. But we're going to go here in the book of Lamentations 4:17. We looked in vain for our allies. Your allies is not the police department. So if you get harassed and snatched up by ICE, don't bother calling. Don't bother going to the news station to get your story out. Nobody's coming to help you. Don't call your mayor, your politician, your state governor. Don't even try to reach out to the president. None of them are going to help you. We looked in vain for our allies to come and save us, but we were looking to nations that could not help us. Yeah, they're not going to help you. And then, they can say this and that, but if they did help us, that would be going against prophecy, and they can't go against the script. We couldn't go into the streets without danger to our lives. That's happening now in America. Our end was near, our days were numbered, we were doomed. Yeah, because the 2/3 about to get cut off. Our enemies were swifter than eagles in flight. Let's go back to the curses. The Lord will send a nation of a fierce countenance who would not regard nor show favor to the young or to the old. That's why they zip-tied them kids in Chicago. If we fled to the mountains, they found us. If we hid in the wilderness, they were waiting for us there, because the enemy gonna come in like a flood. One city at a time. That's what 2 Ezra said. Let's go back to it. There shall be in every place and in the next cities. See, the enemy coming in like a flood, it's not all at once. That's gradual over time. So that's why ICE, they go into these different cities, different states, and then they send in the National Guard here and there. They send in the military here and there. The flood is gradual. I thought it would be all of a sudden. It will be all of a sudden, but they've been setting up the whole time. So you're going to hear worse stories than what's taking place now. And the Lord going to let it come out so we can do lessons on it. And we're going to end off here. We're going to come to the book of 1 Peter 5 and 8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. It should be very clear who the adversary is, who the devil is. It says he's walking about, seeking whom he may devour. You literally see ICE agents. They the devil, they the adversary. But not just the ICE agents, the government they work for, the nation of people they work for. Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, that's the adversary and the devil. And he out and about to destroy our people. But the scriptures say, be sober and vigilant. So watch and pray. So, yeah, this is the collapse of law and order in America. We pretty much showed that America is one big gray area. You got criminals trying to play the hero. America is claiming the people who really are the victims, that they the villains. The law is not being enforced when it should be. It's being overly enforced when it doesn't have to be. People not being penalized as they should. So the whole law and order system in America is being disrupted, and it's only going to get worse. So Lord willing, that's informative, edifying. Till next time, Shalom.